right. Well, thank you all so much for coming. Welcome to the City of Travelers Rest. This is our City Hall. Every time you have an event, there's a little worry that nobody's going to show up, so thank you all for showing up. We appreciate it. I don't think Taffy would draw attention to herself, but she has just been such a advocate and made all this happen. So if we could give her a round of applause, she has done a great job. Thank you so much. So a couple logistical things. If you need to use the restroom, you can come outside and go to the left, go down the hallway a little bit, and take another left. If you have any questions or concerns, you can let me know. I'm going to tell you a little bit about kind of how we came to where we are right now. And I can't wait to hear from our speakers, and just really, really excited to talk about Dicey. So I'll give you the short history lesson. A little bit about myself first. I grew up here in Travelers Rest, a big TR fan, and had always heard about Dicey Langston. Well, I used to be on the board for the Travelers Rest Historical Society, and way back in the day, we started talking about what if we had a Dicey Langston statue one day. And then we started discovering how expensive statues are, and we were like, you know what, maybe that's not going to happen for a while. But that's where the seed was planted. And even the former mayor before me also was really excited about having a Dicey Langston statue. So if you've been on Main Street, we even have a spot where we knew one day Dicey Langston statue was going to go over beside the gazebo. So we knew it was coming. But you know, sometimes there's a timing piece to it. So when I first became mayor, I was the first female mayor of the city of Travelers Rest, which was really exciting. And if you've lived around Greenville for a long time, you might remember Sid Cates, who was on Greenville County Council. He called me up and he's like, Brandy, you're the first female mayor. Now's the time to get Dicey Langston statue happening in Travelers Rest. And so he gave us $10,000 from Greenville County Council as seed money. So that was kind of the start for, all right, now's the timing, let's make this happen. So we started with Sid, appreciated him kind of pushing us forward, and then we started envisioning what could this look like. Well, we also knew that we needed an actual visual of Dicey. She's a very unique character you're going to hear about, and so we started working with Nick Ring and his lovely family, and they have come up with this beautiful mock of Dicey, Daring Dicey in motion. They are great to work with because we had a vision, like we wanted Dicey to be very accessible. You probably know more of the history of Dicey than I do, but she was just an amazing figure, and so we wanted her to be very accessible. We wanted to be able to envision people driving down Main Street and seeing this beautiful woman in motion, and what is she doing and what is her story? And so that kind of sparked where we are today. We've been in fundraising mode for the last couple of years. COVID was also a little bit of a pause for a lot of things, but also for this project, but it's starting to get momentum back. Which has been really great. So we're about $45,000 from having the goal. The city of Travelers Rest has already budgeted money for the landscaping and kind of make it beautiful. And then we have had donations from Greenville County Council. We've had Dicey Langston Middle School donate, which was great. We had a $50,000 anonymous donation from a city of Travelers Rest resident, which was just a huge blessing to have that as well. So we're starting to see this all kind of come to life. So very excited about having everyone here tonight. A little bit of educational learning about Dicey, but also celebrating her as well. So with that, I guess I'll pass on over to you, Taffy. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming.
Okay, I'm going to introduce you to Marnie Kuhns. Actually, if you have a flyer, there's a little bio inside about her. She is the fourth great-granddaughter of Dicey Langston, and the book that you have seen out in the lobby is about Dicey. It's a wonderfully written book. I learned today at lunch it was her first novel, so I loved reading it, and I think you'll enjoy it if you do. Marnie?
Thank you so much for being here tonight. I appreciate it, and I really appreciate Mayor Almadon and Taffy and the DAR and the Historical Society. I've got to spend a little time with them today at lunch, and they're just delightful people. You're very blessed to have such a great mayor and a group of women in your community. And I really love this idea of the Dicey Langston Monument. It's exciting to me, and I love that she's in motion. I love that you did that because when I think of Dicey, I think of, you know, this expert rider. She was a good shot, you know, she was an expert rifle woman, and she, nothing stopped her. She was just larger than life, even though she was probably a shorter person than you might think. And so anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about why I wrote the book to start with, and then we'll get into some of the stories that I know are factual. So when you write a book like this, it's kind of an undertaking. I was telling my husband, he goes, "You seem a little more nervous before you're speaking than you normally do." And I'm like, well, I'm not really nervous. It's just this sense of responsibility to my fourth great grandmother. It's not like just I'm talking about my own ideas or concepts. I'm talking about somebody who really impacted more lives than we probably will ever know for good. And so my first encounter with Dicey was as a young woman. I was probably 12, 13, 14 years old, and my mother made me this book of remembrance that had genealogy and ancestors in it and had stories, and there was the story of Dicey Langston in there. There was one lady who had done an account that was as accurate probably as anyone's, and it shared about 7 different little vignettes that were passed down about Dicey. And I was just mesmerized by this story as a young woman, and especially because she was born May 14th of 1766, and I was born May 1st of 1966. So we were just 200 years apart, and so she got married younger than I did, but we kind of had children at the similar time periods and things, and it was just this parallel trailing story of 200 years ago with my story. And so I always had kind of in the back of my mind, I'd love to do something with this story. I don't know exactly, but I got into writing in about, 1995, 1996, but I was writing nonfiction at the time, and my distributor, was distributing my nonfiction, Christian books. And so anyway, they came to me and they said, "Have you ever thought about writing fiction at all?" And I'm like, well, I might try it. I don't know. But I had a good friend who wrote fiction, and she kind of tutored me a little bit. And I pitched them this idea because they wanted to do a clean romance series. And there's multiple accounts of this one time when these men come to get a rifle from Dicey that James, her brother, has left with her to be picked up, and there's a password, and anyway, it's a cute little story. And some people, the lady her account that I read, it was Thomas Springfield who came to get the rifle, and other people, they don't mention that it was him, but I really thought this is a fun little romance, and there was kind of this story that, that's how they met, and he kept coming back until he talked her into marrying him, kind of thing. And so I pitched the story to my publisher, and they were like, "Oh yeah, write it." But then after I got it done, they just sort of shelved their whole idea for about 2 or 3, 4 years or something. And I'm like, I want to get this done. So I went ahead and got the book done, and they distributed it. So that's why you've got a little bit of more romance element to this story than you might think, because you're probably picking up and you go, I'm going to just read this historical thing. But it's kind of got, a little cheesy romance going in there a little bit, because it was my first novel, and anyway, but people seem to like Dicey either way, and it makes her a little bit more human, a little bit more relatable, because she is a 15 or 16-year-old girl, and 15 or 16-year-old girls, they still have a little bit of romance in them, right? So anyway, so that's kind of how I got into this. And they asked me, the DAR, Taffy and the DAR, asked me to talk about the importance of female patriots. And I started thinking about myself, and am I living up to the legacy that Dicey has, and sometimes I'm like, well, sometimes I feel like I am, and sometimes not so much. And so I started thinking of the stories about Dicey that have been gone through, carried down and everything, and what can they teach me about being a patriot today? So not just, I know there's men in here too, so men, women, we can all be patriots like Dicey. And what can we learn from her stories? So as a young girl in Laurens, South Carolina, let me just give you a little idea of the setting here. she's come from North Carolina as a young woman with her family. And she's come into kind of a nest of people who are for the Tories, or they're Tories and they're for the British, right? They don't want to separate from England. And they're very pro-Britain. And most of the people, even some of the relatives around her, they're all for the British. And so her family is the oddballs, okay? They're the rebels. They're the ones that others are like, you know, those Langstons, you know, they're, you know, wanting to, they think General Washington actually do something, you know, they're kind of not agreeing with them at all. And also you've got a setting of women of the time were basically kind of like, you know, oh yeah, a kid, you know, like, so Dicey's not only got discounted as she's a kid, but also she's a young woman. So they're not paying attention to her. If they're in their parties and they're talking about what their plans are, like we're going to go attack this place or we're going to steal this person's horses or whatever, they're not listening. I mean, they're not noticing that Dicey's there because she's a young woman and she's also a kid. So they just, she started to hear things and she would be like, huh, you know, they're going to attack this place and, you know, my brother knows those people. Or, you know, she had two brothers who served for the Patriot cause. Her father served until he was injured. And some accounts make him sound like he's an infirm old man, but he was wounded, but he was probably, I don't know, 40s or 50s. He wasn't really that old, really. But he, you know, of course, had taught his children to be patriotic. And there's a Langston Baptist church that was formed. He donated the land for that. So they were very religious people, devout people. They had a strong faith and a strong value system. And Solomon and his wife trained their children, to love their country and to stand up for freedom. And they believed that where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. You know, so there's this setting that Dicey's coming from. Now, Dicey was also in a time period when you've almost got a civil war within a Revolutionary War, because these people, whether they were for the Tories or the Whigs, they were fighting with each other. And they would use the war as an excuse to like go into somebody's house and take their stuff, you know, like, oh, I like that guy's art, I'll go get it. Or I like that person's horse, I'll go steal it, you know. And so they were basically looting each other, you know, if you were on the opposite side of the situation. So you've got not only those people, what they call cowboys, who are just basically using the war as an excuse to get what they want from other people or hurt other people or something. But then you've got a more sinister group of people called the Bloody Scouts. And the Bloody Scouts were led by a man named Bill Cunningham. And when I was researching the book, I read some different accounts, and they would be like, okay, you know, it would be like a bunch of women from that time period, and they'd say, well, okay, so Dicey threw herself in front of somebody, you know, she threw herself in front of a gun, big deal, no big deal. I mean, a lot of women did that, a lot of women were spies, you know, she doesn't really stand out. And me, you know, I'm going, this is my fourth great grandmother, she stands out. So I'm looking for it. And so I was reading one of the accounts, and it talks about how the Bloody Scouts came to Solomon Langston, her father, and said, you either take control of your feisty, meddlesome daughter, or we're going to take care of you. And so I did a search for who the Bloody Scouts are, because I didn't know. Well, these guys were horrible. They were ruthless. They would take people and, you know, pull them out of their house, burn their houses down, take their stuff. Then they'd take them and string them up to a tree, and then they'd take their horses and run in around them and slice them, you know, up and dice them. These people, they were just horrifically horrible. They were called Bloody Scouts for a reason. So suddenly Dicey becomes a much bigger hero, because, you know, any story you read, you know, whether it's Harry Potter and Voldemort or whatever, Harry Potter is only great because of Voldemort, because Voldemort is so bad, right? You know, so your hero is only as strong as the villain. And now we've got the Bloody Scouts as the villain for Dicey Langston. And so she really stands out as somebody who is incredibly brave, because she had this warning that if you don't stop what you're doing, we're going to destroy your family. And so she stopped for a while. But I want to take a moment and just ask you to think about what it is to stand up for freedom in a divided society. I think we can relate to that. Maybe not in your little town, maybe you don't have as much of the conflict, but in the world itself, we have a very divided society. So as we go through these stories of Dicey and everything, maybe put yourself in the position of her, of what it's like now, and what if you faced some of the things that she faced and her family faced, and ask yourself, how can I apply what Dicey did to my situation? Because I think there's a lot of insights, since we're living almost in a bit of a parallel time. Not exactly, but we can relate. And also the point there that I wanted to make is that even while everybody else is losing their heads, the Langston family did not. And there are stories and accounts of that I'll be sharing. They did not use it as an excuse to hurt other people. They were still kind to their neighbors. And I think that's important, an important lesson that we can learn. So they did not abandon their values just because everybody else around them did. And they also, we'll keep going and I'll go back to that. So I'm going to share a story with you. This is probably the centerpiece story of Dicey. And there's some conflict over which river she crossed. I think in the book I have as the Tiger. There's a gentleman, I believe, that the DAR is going to have speak in a few more weeks. And he thinks it was the Inouye. Is that how you say it? Okay. Is it Inouye or Inouye? Inouye. Okay. So he thinks it was that one, and he thinks he knows where she crossed. So that's going to be cool for y'all to get to hear him. So anyway, so there's this story of she's been warned. Her dad says, no more of this spying, none of this. So she stops. And then she overhears that this settlement is called the Elder Settlement at Little Eden, okay, is going to be attacked at dawn by the Bloody Scouts. And so Dicey kind of weighs what am I going to do here? Her brother James is stationed at this elder settlement. And obviously she loves her brother. She doesn't want him to die, but she also doesn't want the settlement to die. So she sets out in the middle of the night on foot, and the river at the time is swollen beyond its banks. So evidently they had a lot of rain and everything, and she's not a very tall girl. So she goes out and she gets into the water. She crosses a lot of terrain even to get there, okay, the marshy areas and stuff like that. And when she gets there, she gets about to the middle and kind of loses her footing, and she gets turned around, which way is the right bank, And so they say Providence helps her. Okay, so I'm thinking she said a little prayer. I would have said, please help me figure out which way to go. So she crosses on and ends up, it's the right side when she gets to the other side. She goes on to the settlement. She warns her brother James, and the men have already been out on excursions. They're exhausted. It's late. It's in the middle of the night. They don't want to have to move an entire settlement out. They just like, do we have to do this? And James trusts Dicey, and he's, if Dicey heard it, we're going to do this. And so they're hungry, they're tired. So she says, well, let's get a fire going. Bring me what you got. I'll make you something. So she makes them some hoe cakes, and cooks them as fast as she can. They're kind of still gooey, but they take them and they put them in the shot pouch, and the guys clear out the village, warn everybody, get them out. Dicey goes back to her home, goes back across the river, and gets home in time to make her dad's breakfast without him being any of the wiser. And of course, when the Bloody Scouts arrive, there's nobody there. So when you think about what we owe to Dicey, how many of you are descendants of Dicey in the room? I know a lot of you have been telling me. Okay, so there's quite a few of us. All right. So there's a lot of Dicey Langston ancestors. They write me a lot of times. So not only do we owe our existence to this 15, 16-year-old girl, but everybody who descended from that elder settlement do as well. And we don't even know who those people are, right? I mean, there's just a huge impact, all from the choice to act. Because she could have just said, well, my dad said I can't do it, and I'm not advocating to any young people to just go against your parents' will. But, you know, in this case, I believe she was inspired to do what she did. So, all right. So act with courage is a good point for each of us to be in being patriotic. And then her brother James obviously entrusted her with a lot of things. He believed in her. And so there was a rifle that he wanted delivered to somebody. They were going to come pick it up. Some of the patriots were going to come and pick up this rifle from Dicey. And he said, but don't just give it to anybody here, because anybody could come and pretend that they want something. So I'll give you a password, and they'll give you the password and everything. So I say this, you know, be of service in your daily life, as she was of service to the cause of freedom. And she could be trusted to help in the cause of freedom. But this is where we get that kind of fun story here. When they come to pick up the gun, you know, they knock, they say, you know, we're here to pick up the rifle that James left for us. And she's like, oh, okay. She lets them in. And she goes upstairs to get the rifle, and she comes down, and then she's like, wait a minute, I forgot to ask for the password, right? So she says, okay, what's the countersign? What's the password? And Thomas Springfield is the one who answers, and he's like, I don't need a password. I've already got the gun in you. Know, what do I need a password for? You're right here. And so she levels the gun at him and says, well, take it if you dare, you know. And so he is like, gets a little nervous and gives her the password. So in the book, I make it, she's a little too enamored with how cute Thomas Springfield is. So that's why she forgets the password, because I'm thinking, Dicey doesn't forget to ask for a password. She's a little bit enamored by this boy that shows up at her door. So that's that story. And then there's another story that I was talking to the gentleman who's going to speak in a few weeks, and I hate to throw him under the bus, but he doesn't think this story's real, but I think it's real, and I'll tell you why I think it's real. Okay, so there's a story about how some Whigs show up. Now, so the Whigs are rebels. They're for the Patriots. They show up at Solomon Langston and talking to him in his study. And they reveal that they're going to steal a neighbor's horses because they want, like, the stallion that this guy's got, right? So, and Solomon Langston, being the good man that he is, he's like, this neighbor is a good man. He's peaceful. He's not one of these out here looting anybody. He's not trying to hurt anybody. We know him. He's a good guy. He may not believe what we believe, but he's still a good guy. And so he gets Dicey to go and warn this man that his horses are going to be stolen. And so Dicey warns the man, and then on the way back, on the way back, while she's there, she overhears that this neighbor rounds up some men, and they go, yeah, we're going to lay in wait, and we're going to kill them when they show up to get my horses, because enough of this nonsense. We're not, because really the good guys, and when we say good guys, the Patriots and the Tories, they both did bad stuff. Some of them were bad and would steal from each other either way. And so this guy's like, enough of this. We're going to take care of it. Well, then Dicey's like, well, I can't have the Patriot guys getting killed. So she doubles back and warns the Patriot guys that, hey, they're laying in wait for you about this horse. So this idea of being kind and respectful of everyone, whether they believe the way you do or not, I think she would do that. I mean, that's who she is to me. So, I mean, you could say, oh, she would never warn the enemy, but I think she would. I think they were they were people that honored life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, and they honored their God. And so I think they would have stood up and said, you know, we're not going to act this way. So that's another element there, is to show kindness even to one's enemies. There's another story of where the Bloody Stickouts show up to the Langston home, and they're ready to take out all of the Langston men. They want to get rid of them all. James, Solomon Jr., Solomon. And they show up, but the boys are not there, just the father. And so they're going to kill him. And they come to him in his study, and they're going to kill him, and they're threatening him. And Solomon's trying to, oh, wait a minute now, you know, let's don't do this. And Dicey comes in and throws herself in front of her dad and says, no, you're not going to do, you're going to have to shoot through me. And they threaten. They're like, well, this bullet can go through you. We don't care. We'll shoot you too. And but because of her bravery and her insistence, well, you're just going to have to shoot me, they leave. And it says they leave with admiration for the filial affection, you know, that family affection, that she would do that for her dad. And so protecting our families, I think, is important. The family itself, I think, is under attack, and I think that is something that we can do as patriots, is stand up for the family. Another couple stories, I don't know about you, but sometimes if I'm dealing with a lot of problems, I just kind of want to stick my head in the sand and pray they go away, you know, and not really deal with them head on. But I think Dicey handled things head on, and there's two accounts of this that I'll share with you. One of them is where some men came to the door, and they were trying to get into the house and everything, and she stood on the other side of the door with her rifle and threatened them off, like, I'm going to shoot you through the door. I can shoot through the door if I have to get rid of you, you know. And she did it so with such strength that they were scared, and they just left. They wouldn't face her that way. There's another one where she's carrying a message to the Patriots, and she's taken. Somebody gets her, and they're like, we know who you are. We know you are the daring Dicey Langston, and you're carrying a message, and we want to know what it is. You're going to tell us what it is. And she refuses and tells them, you know, they'll just have to kill her. And so they're prepared to, and it says she takes this white handkerchief and she opens it up in front of herself as if she's giving a place for the contents of the weapon to be discharged in this, you know, like, shoot me, here's the bullseye, you know, kind of thing. And one of the guys goes to shoot, and another one takes pity on her and knocks the man's arm in the air, and the gun goes off, and in the kind of the fray, she's able to escape and get away. So I've thought a lot about those two situations and thought, okay, how can I face things head on, you know, rather than just kind of hoping problems go away? How can you address them with strength of character and deal with them? And I think sometimes in our society today, facing challenges head on may have to do with, you've got conflicts going on with family members or friends or something, and we just want to kind of ghost people and not deal with it. But maybe being willing to have the conversations and make peace is a way of facing our problems head on today. Because I think she would have done that. I don't think she would have just let problems simmer over here and not address them. The last tip from Dicey is to leave a patriotic posterity. Now, I realize you can't make your children be patriots, but because I've got some, and some of them are, and some of them don't really care. But you can teach them. You know, we can teach them correct principles, and we can be good role models for them. And Dicey ended up having, one obituary says, I think Thomas has said 21 children, and Dicey said 22, but I don't think only 15 of them we know lived to adulthood. So the others, some of them didn't even make it into the family Bible, but she evidently had miscarriages, and she counted them. She counted her children. So she left this posterity of people that across time, they have been, they fought in almost every major war. The descendants of Dicey Langston have. They've been patriots throughout time, and I don't know why I mean, my dad is a hardcore patriot, so I always say my dad taught me freedom and stuff, but I think it's the legacy of Dicey. I think it, would you say that, Karen? You're my cousin. It's in that, I don't know any non-freedom loving Springfields. So I think she said sometime toward the end of her life that she was proud to have 32 sons and grandsons who could take up arms in defense of their liberty. And she ended up having, I think at the time of her death, she had 140 grandchildren and great-grandchildren, the obituary said. So, I mean, that's a huge posterity to leave a legacy. And this book here, I have this Springfield book, and it talks about how Thomas and Dicey's descendants and the different wars that they served in and things there. And I think there's one thing I wanted to bring out as I was pondering on this, just in final wrapping up, is that patriotism is more than fighting for liberty. I think it's how we hold to our values, you know, of freedom and honor and integrity and kindness, and how we treat other people. Because this country was founded on like a God-fearing premise, you know, that we are all created in the image of our Maker, and that we're here to, you know, He created us on equal ground, you know, and what we do with our lives from here, that's our choice, you know, of what we do. And so I think how we protect those values, while we can protect those values, is patriotism. Thank you. I appreciate your opportunity to come and talk to y'all. And so anyway, did you want to have questions, or do you?
Questions, yes. Does anybody have questions you'd like to ask?
Delaney, you got a question? I made one book on Dicey. I have some other books about Dicey's descendants, different ones, but just one about Dicey. Good question. Thank you. I think so, yeah. That's where her, at least that's not where all of her Revolutionary War escapades, but that's where she lived with Thomas. Yeah. And these pictures here, I think I've got, yeah, that's where she lived when she died, right there, that cabin. Probably, would be my guess. And then that's a picture of the Thomas Springfield home as well. So it's probably the same house, just whether it's the side or the... Yeah, we went to the, that's where he's talking about, on Tigerville, that monument across from the NRE Baptist Church. Yeah, ma'am. Yeah, it's private property, and I don't think they want anybody on it at this point. Ma'am? A good question. That, come back when the other gentleman, he knows that question. He'll probably give you the exact mileage to it. When is that next meeting? Oh. Oh. Right. I'm, I don't know. I don't know. Um, yeah. No. Yeah, there's a monument, and then we're gonna have a statue. So, yeah. I have a picture of the gravestone on DiceyLangston.com if you want to see it. So you can. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
We have a second speaker, and stand up for a minute and take a break. There's some cookies in the lobby, or we can move on if you'd rather me. Okay. Nick Ring is the sculptor who was chosen by the committee to do the Dicey Langston sculptor. And he is going to give us kind of an update on where we are with the Dicey statue. Nick?
Thanks, Taffy. Hey, and thanks for all you've done putting this together, and Mayor, it's great. Does anybody want to go on an escapade and find that grave? That'd be awesome. Yeah, with the musket, in full garb, that'd be awesome. Yeah, hey, thanks for being here. I want to, it's not loud enough. Louder, sorry. That's my better half telling me to be louder. She's co-owner, and she pretty much runs the whole show. I'm the talent. So you've probably seen the work. So Marnie, thanks for that. Marnie's been a key reference in me putting this thing together. And I tell you what, all she said, wow, that was great. But my job is to take all that and lump it into a ball of clay and then start fashioning whatever that history is. And yeah, action pretty well stands out, was the key to me, and finally arriving at that, at the design you see out here. The garments blowing in the wind and all that. But when I first started this project, it was like any typical monument you might see, as a person just kind of, how you think of a monument. It has a big pedestal, and you have a person standing on there. And I think these days they tear those things down, right? Pretty much. And I thought, well, you know what? She was such a hero. I mean, such a courageous and spirited person, and a girl of young woman of action, that I'm gonna have her take, under her own volition, just have her take herself down and dash off the pedestal. So nobody's gonna tamper with her, and she wasn't really one to be tampered with. So that's kind of how I arrived at it. I had one pose where she was holding a rifle, like just standing there. And this is when I was still in that mindset of pedestal, big pedestal, and a basket of eggs hooked on her arm here like this, and she's got her gun out like that. I thought it was pretty cool, but that got me on the action track. I said, and it just kept going more and more and more. And then as it became kind of metaphoric, like what is the spirit of Dicey? And then that translated in how do I do that? So billowing drapes, wind, sound all came into play. So it's really what I have is a symbol right now of the spirit of Dicey, and we could probably call her that, perhaps. Her likeness is not formulated yet, and I'd like to, we have relative descendants of Dicey here tonight. I would love to have pictures and they'd be old pictures, because I want to go back as far as, I don't know if you have any, Marnie, or not, but as far as we can get of young women from Springfield, Langston lineage. So I'd be on maybe I'll send my assistants into a picture gathering thing. So really what I was trying to do is translate Dicey's legacy as a heroic patriot in bronze and stone. Having read Marnie's book and other biographical research, it became clear to me that this is my artist intent statement. So it became clear to me she was an extremely active but effectively stealth agent in the Patriot movement. So I didn't see her as one to be put up on a pedestal for any length of time, let alone forever. She was not a standing around type, except perhaps to catch a word or two from unsuspecting loyalists. So, like this reiterate here, I depicted Dicey dashing off her pedestal, answering the call to action as she most frequently did. So discretion of metaphor and symbolism is going to be very important in this work. One other aspect to this job is to actually just make a sculpture that's cool, that stands on its own as a great work of art. And I think that's got an important aspect to it, something abstractly intriguing when viewed from a distance that will compel passerbys to investigate. So I guess the location is going to be kind of key to that. Draw them in for a closer look, something that TR will want to proudly advertise more than a great photo op, although that's very important. But most importantly, an overdue recognition to a local hero. With everybody's help, we can probably get this done, I think. I think it's going to be a powerful piece. I think it's going to be something unique. I've been doing this a long time, like 30-some years. I've never done anything like this. I haven't seen a lot like it. It's going to stand out, and I think it's going to be wonderful, really, for this town. So that's about all. Artists shouldn't be heard; they should be seen. Their work. So, yeah. No, actually, I'd like to encourage a lot of questions, and there's no dumb questions. That's a cliche. Oh, geez, maybe. Yeah, just as, yeah, okay, I'd take a mold off that little one. Yeah, exactly. We talked about that, right? We talked about maybe doing that or something. That's where the conversation ended. They would be, hypothetically. Okay. Yeah, wouldn't that be neat? Yeah, yeah. I was really happy. I was happy I had that thought. I think maybe one of my kids may have thought that too. Oh, from where we are at right now, kind of financially driven. Um, I would say at the stage it is right now, it would be foundry is about 5 to 6 months at the foundry. And we can go into that. I mean, there's a board out there my lovely daughter, who's over here, put together that explains the whole foundry process. It's pretty involved. So you give it a year, this kind of thing a year, usually, once you get it going and the funds are available. So, oh yeah. So it's going to be kind of an engineering feat, but I think I got that worked out. So you got it, Mayor. 2020. Yeah, that's doable. I don't remember those notes, yeah. And if you want to enlarge it in bronze a little bit, it's, 70. So, anyhow, well, thanks. Yeah. Yeah, ask me any more questions out there if you want to see what's going on or whatever, so, all right. Yeah, there's a loop of the little they're called maquettes or models, so, um, yeah. Cookies.
And those of you who want to get the book, Marnie will be signing
Marnie is outside.
out there. This is relative, so.
So she's going to get a picture with us so that we can post it.
Post it, yeah. And then I'm gonna go back to